After following his maid one evening, a millionaire uncovered something that changed his life. Alex Price, a self-made millionaire, had everything one could dream of: a sprawling mansion, luxury cars, and an endless array of material wealth. But despite his outward success, a shadow of suspicion had been creeping into his life for the past few weeks. It wasn't the kind of suspicion you'd expect from a man of his stature, but something about his maid, Emma, wasn't adding up. Emma had been working for Alex for over a year. She was diligent, polite, and always on time. Yet lately something seemed off. There were small things that bothered Alex. Missing items here and there, a slight shift in Emma's demeanor when he asked about certain things. But it wasn't just the missing trinkets or misplaced documents. What truly unsettled him was her sudden, unexplained absences and the way she seemed to be spending money she didn't appear to have. On that particular Friday evening, Alex found himself sitting in the expansive living room of his mansion, going over some financial papers. From his vantage point, he had a clear view of the front door. His thoughts were interrupted when he heard the familiar sound of footsteps in the hallway. Emma was preparing to leave for the day. She had gathered her belongings quickly, more so than usual. As she grabbed her coat, Alex noticed something unusual. Shopping bags, bulging at the sides, were tucked neatly under her arm. He furrowed his brow. It wasn't like Emma to leave early on a Friday, especially when there was still work to be done around the house. But more than that, it was the shopping bags that raised a red flag. Alex watched as she hurried toward the door, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Without thinking, he stood up, his curiosity getting the better of him. He casually made his way to the large windows overlooking the driveway, his heart beating faster with a mixture of intrigue and suspicion. He watched as Emma walked briskly to a beat-up sedan parked at the curb. It was the car she'd been driving for months, a far cry from the sleek cars that usually parked in the driveway. She loaded the bags into the trunk, her movements quick, almost practiced. "Where's she going?" Alex muttered to himself, his mind racing with possibilities. Was she heading to the mall? Was she meeting someone? Or, he stopped himself. The thought that she might be stealing from him, hiding it all behind the guise of a simple maid, didn't sit well. But it was a thought that had been gnawing at him for weeks. Determined to uncover the truth, Alex grabbed his coat. He moved quietly to the front door, his eyes fixed on Emma's car as it pulled away from the curb. She was headed in the opposite direction of the usual route home, down a street that didn't lead anywhere familiar. That was odd, he thought. Without hesitation, Alex decided to follow. He didn't need to make his suspicions known to Emma. Not yet. His heart raced as he climbed into his own car and began to follow at a safe distance. The road ahead was unfamiliar, filled with dark alleys and quiet residential areas. But he knew one thing for sure. He needed answers. Something was off, and he wasn't going to rest until he found out what. As Emma turned down a side street, Alex's mind was flooded with questions. What was she up to? Was this just a harmless errand, or was there something far deeper going on beneath the surface? The bags, the strange detour, everything was adding up to something Alex wasn't ready to confront. The night was still young, and so was the mystery. What Alex didn't know yet was that following Emma would change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Alex's curiosity burned through him as he followed Emma's car, the headlights of his vehicle cutting through the darkness of the quiet streets. He hadn't planned on tailing her tonight, but the unease that had settled in his stomach refused to let him rest. The bag she carried earlier, her unexplained detour, it all seemed too odd to ignore. He needed answers, and he was willing to go to great lengths to find them. Emma's car eventually stopped near a small, run-down bus stop at the edge of town. She stepped out quickly, glancing over her shoulder before hurrying towards a waiting bus. Alex slowed his car to a stop a block away, carefully parking behind a line of trees to avoid being noticed. He watched her board the bus, her back turned as she disappeared through the doors. For a moment, Alex sat in his car, unsure of his next move. He could turn back now, pretend he hadn't seen anything, and chalk it up to nothing more than a quirky habit. But that gnawing feeling told him otherwise. There was something about Emma's routine that felt like it hid a deeper truth. Without overthinking, Alex started his engine and followed the bus at a safe distance. The bus rattled down narrow streets and turned into areas Alex didn't often venture into. It wasn't a neighborhood that screamed wealth or success, but rather a quiet, modest area that seemed disconnected from his world. The bus eventually came to a stop at a small, weathered building. Above the door, a faded sign read Community Center. Alex watched as Emma quickly disembarked, her shopping bags no longer in sight. She carried only a simple leather tote now, and she walked with purpose toward the entrance, disappearing inside. He parked his car a few blocks away and cautiously approached the building on foot, keeping a low profile. The community center was modest at best. Its cracked windows and chipped paint told stories of years of neglect. Yet there was something undeniably welcoming about it, as though it was a safe haven for those who needed it most. Alex hung back behind a thick cluster of bushes, watching through a window. His breath caught as he saw Emma inside. She was standing at the front of a small room, facing a group of elderly men and women. They were all immigrants, judging by their attire and the worn-down look of their faces. Emma spoke to them softly but with authority, a smile on her face as she held up a book with large print. "Repeat after me," Emma instructed, her voice calm yet confident. The book is on the table. The seniors repeated in broken English, some stumbling over the words, but all of them clearly trying their best. Emma didn't rush them, gently guiding them with patience and understanding. Alex's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a thief. This was someone who was giving back, someone who was making a real difference in the lives of others. He stood frozen, hidden in the shadows, as he watched Emma teach the elderly immigrants. She wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just the woman he had misjudged in his mind. Emma was a teacher, a volunteer, someone who gave her time to those who needed it most. It struck Alex then that all his suspicions were built on assumptions, nothing more. He continued watching, his guilt mounting with every word Emma spoke, every gesture of encouragement she offered. She wasn't just helping them with their English. She was helping them build confidence, instill hope where there might have been none. For the first time, Alex saw the woman he had thought of as an enigma in an entirely new light. His initial suspicions had been wrong. Emma wasn't the person he had imagined. She was, in fact, the opposite, selfless, kind, and far more complex than he'd ever given her credit for. As he stood there, quietly observing the scene through the window, Alex realized that what he had once seen as a simple case of suspicion had, in reality, uncovered a story of compassion and dedication. It was a moment of clarity for Alex. The woman he thought he knew was someone entirely different, and she was far more admirable than he could have ever imagined. Alex couldn't shake the image of Emma standing before that small class, her gentle yet firm voice guiding a group of elderly immigrants through the complexities of the English language. He'd expected to find something entirely different, something that confirmed his suspicions, but what he witnessed shattered everything he thought he knew about her. The woman who had, in his mind, become synonymous with the possibility of betrayal was now someone entirely new. As he sat in his car, parked a few streets away from the community center, Alex replayed the scene in his mind. Emma wasn't just teaching English. She was teaching something deeper: dignity, hope, and the belief that no one was too old or too lost to learn. He had watched her encourage her students with warmth, her eyes lighting up with each small victory. It was a side of her he'd never seen before. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the internal conflict now brewing inside him. How had he misjudged her so completely? It wasn't just about the missing items anymore. It was about everything he hadn't noticed. He'd seen Emma as nothing more than a domestic worker, someone whose life and struggles were beneath his concern. But now, as he sat there in the darkness, he realized how wrong he had been. His mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, each one pulling him further away from the conclusions he had drawn. He had assumed Emma was hiding something, that the shopping bags were signs of something unsavory. But the way she had spoken to her students, the patience with which she corrected their mistakes, it was clear now that her heart was in the right place. The bus ride, the unassuming way she'd carried those bags, and the way she'd slipped into the community center without anyone noticing, It all made sense now. She hadn't been hiding something from him. She had been giving, quietly and without expectation, to a cause she believed in. She had been helping people who had nothing but a dream to start anew in a country far from their own. Alex leaned back against the headrest, staring at the ceiling of his car, trying to make sense of his emotions. He had let his wealth and privilege cloud his judgment. The fact that Emma had been working tirelessly to help others, without recognition or reward, left him feeling small. It wasn't the maid he had misjudged. It was himself. A sense of shame washed over him, but it was quickly replaced by a burning curiosity. If Emma was doing all this for others, what else had he missed? What kind of woman was she really? The desire to understand her, to uncover the truth, not the assumptions he had held, grew stronger. He had to find out more. It wasn't enough to simply watch her from a distance. Alex knew he couldn't continue living in ignorance, letting his assumptions define his actions. He needed to get to the heart of who Emma really was. The brief encounter he'd witnessed at the community center was only the beginning. There was more to this woman than he had ever imagined, and he couldn't let his guilt and pride stand in the way of discovering the full picture. Without giving a second thought, Alex decided to dig deeper. He would need to speak to the people who knew her, people who could offer insight into her life. But this time, it would be different. He wouldn't follow her as a detective chasing a lead. He would approach this investigation with openness, a willingness to learn, and the humility to admit that he might not have all the answers. For the first time, Alex felt a sense of hope, not in his usual world of business and power, but in the possibility of understanding the woman he had once seen as a mere employee. Emma had become a mystery, but now it was a mystery he wanted to solve, not to satisfy his suspicion, but to satisfy a newfound respect. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Alex's perspective had irrevocably changed. Emma wasn't the thief he'd once believed her to be. She was something far more remarkable, and he was ready to learn just how much more. The following day, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of a revelation. His suspicion, once rooted in certainty, now seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by guilt. He had spent the entire night reflecting on his actions, and in his heart, he knew he needed to know more about Emma, not for the sake of his own redemption, but to understand the woman he had so thoroughly misjudged. After work, Alex made his way back to the community center. He wasn't sure what he expected to find, perhaps some clue, some confirmation that would tie all of his suspicions together, but what he discovered shattered his expectations completely. From a safe distance, Alex observed the scene once more. Emma was at the front of the room, as usual, guiding her students through another lesson. She wasn't just teaching English. She was teaching them how to navigate a world that had often been unkind. He felt an unfamiliar tug in his chest as he watched her, her passion radiating in every gesture, every smile shared with her students. But it wasn't just Emma's dedication to teaching that caught Alex's attention. As the class broke for a brief recess, Emma stepped outside. She spoke to a woman who had just arrived, a middle-aged lady who looked frail and worn, her clothes humble but well-kept. Alex strained to hear their conversation. He wasn't eavesdropping. He was simply curious, compelled by an invisible thread that connected him to Emma. The older woman handed Emma an envelope. They exchanged a few words before Emma gently placed it in her bag. The woman smiled and left, and Emma returned to the community center. But the image of the envelope lingered in Alex's mind. It wasn't just any envelope. It was thick, probably filled with cash. A shiver ran down his spine. Later that evening, Alex took a different approach. He didn't want to remain in the shadows, hiding behind his suspicions. Instead, he reached out to the community center's director, posing as a concerned individual looking to support local efforts. He asked if they had any knowledge of Emma's involvement. To his surprise, the director responded with warmth and gratitude, detailing Emma's role as one of their most committed volunteers. But there was more. She's also one of our biggest supporters, the director added. She sends us money every month to help cover the expenses of the center. It's not much, but she gives what she can. And her mother, well, her mother is sick. Emma's been sending every penny she can spare to cover medical bills. The words hit Alex like a punch in the gut. Emma, the woman he had accused of stealing from him, had been silently supporting her mother, sacrificing her own needs for the sake of a loved one. She had been living modestly, not because she couldn't afford more, but because she had chosen to help someone else. Alex's face flushed with shame. The woman he had seen as a potential thief was, in reality, a woman of exceptional character. She had never asked for recognition. She had never expected anything in return. She had simply given, quietly, without fanfare, and without the slightest hint of selfishness. It was then that Alex realized the full extent of his mistake. He had judged Emma based on his own narrow view of the world, a world defined by wealth, appearances, and assumptions. In doing so, he had failed to see the depth of her compassion, the quiet strength she carried. The guilt that washed over him was overwhelming. He had wronged her. He had presumed the worst about her, all while she had quietly changed lives, including his. Determined to make amends, Alex came up with a plan. He would donate anonymously to the community center, more than Emma had ever given. It would be his way of atoning for his assumptions and his way of showing her that, while he may have been blind before, he now saw her for who she truly was. He contacted the center under the guise of a philanthropist interested in supporting the work they were doing. Within days, he arranged for the first of many anonymous donations to be made. Each contribution would be significant, aimed at supporting not only the center, but also Emma's personal cause, her mother's medical treatment. As the donations were delivered, Alex's heart lightened. The decision wasn't just about money. It was about redemption, about repairing the damage he had done to his own understanding of Emma. The feeling of making things right, even in a small way, gave him a sense of peace. But what mattered most to him was knowing that Emma, this selfless, compassionate woman, would never know the full extent of his apology. She didn't need to. She would continue her work, as she always had, unaware of the man who had once judged her. And that, Alex realized, was the truest form of humility. Over the next few weeks, things between Alex and Emma began to shift. The anonymous donations continued to flow into the community center, and with each one, Emma's gratitude seemed to grow. She never knew where the money came from, but it was evident in the way she carried herself, her shoulders a little higher, her smile a little brighter. The funds had eased the burden on the center, allowing it to expand its outreach and offer more resources to the community. Emma was thrilled, but she remained unaware of the true source. Alex, on the other hand, watched from a distance, a mix of satisfaction and guilt pooling in his chest. His heart swelled every time he saw her walk into the center, her eyes sparkling with excitement and hope for the people she served. He had no intention of revealing his role in her good fortune. In fact, he liked it better this way, being close to her without her knowing. It wasn't long before Alex started visiting the community center more often, albeit under the guise of helping out with some of the new projects. He offered his business expertise, helping with administrative tasks and organizing events. His presence there became more regular, and Emma, appreciative of his involvement, started to see him in a different light. They would talk, briefly at first, about the center's progress or a new initiative. But over time, the conversations began to flow more easily, stretching beyond work and into personal territory. One afternoon, as they sat together, sorting through paperwork in a quiet corner of the center, Alex found himself studying Emma as she focused intently on her task. She was so present, so unpretentious, and yet there was a quiet strength about her that Alex had never fully recognized before. He had always admired her from afar, but now, as they worked side by side, he found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. "You know," Emma said, breaking his reverie, "I never thought I'd end up working here. I always wanted to teach, but I thought it was a dream too far out of reach." Alex leaned back, his gaze never leaving her. "I think you're making a bigger impact than you realize." Emma smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Maybe, but I do it for them, not for me. They need someone who understands. Most of them are starting over, and that can be daunting. Her words hit him in ways he hadn't expected. He knew she was dedicated, but hearing her speak so honestly about her work, her sacrifice, made him respect her more. She wasn't just teaching English. She was helping people build new lives. She was their hope, their anchor. "I can see that," Alex replied quietly. "You're special, Emma. What you're doing here, what you give, it's rare." Her smile softened, and for the first time, Alex noticed the vulnerability in her eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there. She didn't say anything, but her look spoke volumes. She was carrying more than just the weight of her responsibilities. There was a quiet loneliness there, something Alex hadn't expected to see in someone so full of life. From that moment, their connection deepened. They spent more time together, often staying late at the center after the others had gone home, talking about everything and nothing. They laughed easily, shared stories from their pasts, and slowly, without either of them realizing, the walls that had once separated them began to crumble. Alex found himself opening up to her in a way he never had with anyone else. He shared the pressures of his business, the loneliness of success, the emptiness that money couldn't fill. Emma listened intently, never judging, always offering support with her words and her warmth. She didn't see the millionaire in him. She saw him as a man with struggles, just like everyone else. And as the days passed, Alex realized something unexpected. He was falling for her. The attraction was undeniable, but it wasn't just her beauty or kindness. It was the way she carried herself, her dedication, her genuine heart. Emma wasn't someone who wanted anything from him. She didn't know about his wealth, his status, or the motives that had originally driven him to follow her. She just knew him as a man who wanted to help. Emma, too, felt the shift in their relationship. There was something about Alex, his quiet presence, his understated sincerity, that made her feel understood. She began to look forward to their conversations, to the moments when they could just be themselves, away from the world's expectations. In his company, she felt seen, heard, valued. But neither of them voiced it. Not yet. They both sensed the unspoken bond growing between them, but neither dared to push it further, uncertain of how to navigate the territory they had suddenly found themselves in. For now, they were content to let the connection simmer beneath the surface, each moment of shared laughter and understanding deepening the bond that neither had expected. And in the quiet of those moments, both Alex and Emma realized that what had started as a simple act of kindness was blossoming into something much more. The air was thick with anticipation as Alex stood outside the community center. It was late, and the streetlights flickered faintly in the distance. He had come to a decision that weighed heavily on his chest. Tonight, he would tell Emma the truth, the full, unvarnished truth. There was no more hiding behind anonymous donations or veiling his intentions. It was time for Emma to know the man behind the gifts. He waited for her to finish with the last of her students, his nerves fraying with each passing minute. Emma had been in his thoughts constantly lately. Her kindness, her strength, her unwavering dedication. It had all led him to this moment, a crossroads where honesty would finally set them free. He only hoped it wouldn't tear them apart. When Emma finally emerged from the building, she looked as she always did, tired but content. The corners of her eyes softened when she saw him, and for a brief moment, Alex considered not saying anything, letting things remain as they were. But he knew that wasn't fair to either of them. He couldn't keep living this lie. "Emma," he called, his voice hesitant, almost foreign to him after so many days of silence on the matter. She turned, her smile fading when she noticed the seriousness in his face. "Alex, what's wrong?" "You look," she trailed off, noticing the tension in his posture. "I need to tell you something," he began, his words coming out slowly, carefully. "It's about the donations, the ones that have been coming to the center." Emma's brow furrowed, and a look of confusion crossed her face. "What about them? You've been helping out so much with the center. The donations, they've made a real difference." Alex took a deep breath, the weight of his confession threatening to crush him. "I've been the one donating." The words hung in the air between them. Emma stared at him, her expression unreadable. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. She blinked, taking a step back as her gaze flickered to the ground, processing what he had just said. "I've been the one funding the center's donations," Alex continued, his voice soft but firm. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to think I was doing it to get your attention. I thought if you knew, it would change things. But I can't keep lying to you." Silence stretched between them like an eternity. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, her mind racing as she tried to piece everything together. She had never suspected Alex was the anonymous benefactor, though she had often wondered about the unexpected generosity. Now, the truth felt like a betrayal. "You've been lying to me this whole time." Her voice was quiet, but the hurt in it was palpable. "This whole time, you've been pretending to be someone you're not, using money to get close to me." Alex felt his heart drop, the sting of her words sinking deep. "I never meant to deceive you. I only wanted to help the center, to support you, and maybe in some small way show you that I see you. I never thought it would turn into something more. I wanted to make things right." Emma stood there, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find any trace of the man she thought she knew. She shook her head, a deep sigh escaping her lips. "I don't know, Alex. You crossed a line. I trusted you, and now I'm not sure what to feel." For a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. The words he had rehearsed in his head seemed hollow now, insignificant compared to the depth of the pain he had caused. But one thing remained clear. He needed to make things right, no matter the cost. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice raw. "I was wrong to keep this from you. You deserve better than that. You deserve honesty. Please forgive me." Emma remained silent, her gaze softening as she processed his words. The hurt in her eyes was still there, but there was something else now, a flicker of understanding. She exhaled slowly, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "I don't know if I can just forgive you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I understand why you did it. You thought it would help, didn't you? You wanted to fix things, make up for what you thought you'd missed. But you should have trusted me." Alex stepped forward, his heart laid bare. "I know. I should have." The silence lingered between them, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like a moment of resolution, a shared understanding that both of them had been carrying their own burdens. And then, without thinking, Alex reached out and gently cupped her face. Emma looked up at him, her eyes searching his, as if looking for the man she'd come to know. Slowly, she placed her hand over his, her touch warm. "I don't want to lose you, Emma," he whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you. I care about you. I've always cared." Her lips parted, and for the first time in days, she smiled, a small, tentative smile that spoke volumes. "I care about you, too," she whispered back. In that moment, the tension that had held them both captive for so long began to melt away. They weren't perfect, and they still had work to do, but they had taken the first step towards something real. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were in it together. As the weeks passed, Alex and Emma's bond grew stronger, forged in the shared work of supporting the community center. What had started as an awkward confession, followed by forgiveness, had blossomed into something genuine. They were no longer the employer and the employee, the millionaire and the volunteer. They were partners, united by a shared purpose, helping others. They spent their days working side by side, planning events, organizing donations, and expanding the center's reach. Emma had taken on a leadership role, her vision for the center becoming clearer with each passing day. Alex, now fully invested in the cause, used his business acumen to streamline operations and increase funding. He found fulfillment in the work, something he had never expected from the world of wealth he had grown up in. In the evenings, they would sit together in the small office at the center, planning their next steps. The space was cluttered with papers, books, and old chairs, but it felt like home. There was a comfort in their shared silence as they worked, each understanding the other's thoughts without words. Alex had begun to realize that the satisfaction he once found in business deals and profits now paled in comparison to the joy he felt when Emma smiled at him, grateful for his support. Their late-night conversations often turned to personal matters, dreams, fears, and aspirations. Alex learned about Emma's struggles growing up, her sacrifices for her family, and her unwavering belief in the power of education. In turn, he shared his own past, his loneliness, the isolation that wealth had brought him, and the mistakes he had made along the way. They were building a life together, not just as business partners, but as two people who truly saw each other for who they were. One evening, as they were leaving the center, Alex turned to Emma, his eyes filled with quiet determination. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." Emma paused, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What's on your mind?" Alex took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "I've spent my life running from what really matters. But being with you, working with you, I finally understand what it's all about. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Emma." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "Alex, I know we've taken our time, but I don't want to wait any longer," he continued, stepping closer. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Emma didn't say anything. The world seemed to pause as she searched his face, reading the sincerity in his expression. Then, with a soft smile, she nodded. "Yes, Alex. Yes." The joy that swept over him was overwhelming. He took her hand, lifting it to his lips as she laughed, her eyes shining with tears. Their lives had been full of unexpected turns, but this moment, this one simple question, felt like everything had come full circle. Their wedding, when it came, was simple but beautiful. It wasn't the grand affair that Alex had once imagined for himself. Instead, it was a celebration of love, of redemption, and of the new life they had built together. The ceremony was held at the community center, surrounded by the people who had become their second family, friends, volunteers, and students. The center, once a modest building struggling to survive, had transformed into a beacon of hope, a testament to the hard work and dedication of Alex and Emma. As they exchanged vows, Emma's hand in his, Alex felt a sense of peace he had never known. The applause that followed was filled with warmth, not just for the couple, but for the work they had done together. It wasn't just their wedding. It was a celebration of everything they had accomplished. Together, they had created a community, built relationships, and made a real difference. As the night wore on and the music played, Alex and Emma danced under the soft glow of string lights. Their love, tested by doubt and fear, had survived and thrived. They had built something lasting, not just between themselves, but with the people around them. The community they had helped had become their family, and their love had become a cornerstone for something bigger than either of them. In that moment, as they swirled around the dance floor, Alex realized that he had found the true meaning of success. Not in wealth or status, but in the love they had built together, the lives they had touched, and the future they would continue to build hand in hand. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Alex and Emma's journey from suspicion to love? How did their connection inspire you? Share your thoughts on the character's growth and the twist in the story. Don't forget to mention your favorite moments or how you would have reacted if you were in Alex's shoes. We love hearing from you, and your feedback keeps us going.